Pleasure. All right, perfect. Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is a live presentation as evidenced by my back and forth conversation. It is 12:30 p.m. on the 16th of December, Wednesday. Happy to be with all of our friends here from Southern Classic Realtors. Very appreciative to James Hamby for inviting me to come teach you and lecture today on the Total Brokerage Transaction Management Platform. Last week, we did 2 separate days on Total Brokerage CRM. We will not be covering any of that whatsoever today. Those are all recorded and provided to James. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of spending time with a lot of your agents from your company, and we trained on the Total Brokerage Transaction Management portion, which we'll be repeating today exactly what we covered yesterday. It's a duplicate. We do record all of our Total Brokerage trainings like we're recording right now. That way we can send James copies of the training classes that he can then circulate with everybody. I'm going to gracefully ask everyone to keep themselves muted unless they are specifically talking to me. And I'm going to take the liberty at this very moment to mute you all myself. So as of right now, none of you can hear anybody other than me. Everyone else is muted. Please do keep yourself muted unless I call upon you and offer the ability to answer questions. Every 3 to 5 minutes, I'm going to open up the floor to questions. I'm going to say, does anybody have any questions? So you'll have lots and lots and lots of opportunity to ask questions. I would ask you, if possible, to please hold your questions to one of those 3 to 5 minute windows of time where I ask people to ask questions, because it's very difficult if I'm interrupted constantly to stop and answer questions. But I'll give you at least 15 times you can answer questions throughout the next hour and a half, at least 15. If you are impatient and you can't wait for me to open up the floor for questions and you need to desperately ask something, go right ahead and unmute yourself and interrupt me and say, Ben, I just can't wait 2 minutes. I need to ask this right now. And I will stop what I'm doing and I will answer you right now. I will totally stop everybody from learning and I will help you right now because I want you to be happy and you to have your questions answered right now. Okay? So we're going to dive right into the Total Brokerage Transaction Management Platform. I do not have the ability when I'm teaching on Zoom to see you raising your hand and jumping around and waving saying I have a question. Why? Because when I'm sharing my screen with you, all that I see on my side is the screen I'm sharing. Right now, we have 34 people in this meeting. In about 10 seconds from now, when I start sharing my screen, I will not see any of you. So you may grow frustrated saying, I have a question. Why isn't he calling on me? I'm waiting. Hey. I don't see you. You're going to have to unmute yourself and stop and say, Ben, I'm raising my hand. Because there's no way I'll know you're raising your hand because I won't see your beautiful face because I'm looking at my screen, not at the headshots. So with that being said, welcome to Total Brokerage Transaction Management Training. We'll be together for the next hour and a half until 2 p.m. And I promise by the time we finish today, you will feel relatively comfortable using the platform. You will not feel very comfortable under any circumstances because this is a very robust, monstrous, huge, awesome, incredible, gigantic platform. It's going to take you several hours of practice before you feel totally comfortable, but you're going to feel modestly comfortable when we're done today. And the only way you're going to get comfortable is by utilizing and playing with the platform and coming back to training classes so that I can help you feel comfortable. We're going to provide you lots of attention, lots of customer service, lots of Q&A, and we're going to make sure that you are totally comfortable. It's just not going to be today. It's a staged plan of action, and I promise we'll get you all there. Any questions before we start and I show everyone how to log in? Perfect. Seeing none, let's show you how to log in. To access Total Brokerage, you have to navigate, preferably using Chrome or Safari, to the website scr.totalbrokerage.com. It's right up there on your screen, scr.totalbrokerage.com. Notice intentionally there is no www at the beginning. I just typed in scr.totalbrokerage.com. And when I navigate there, I see the login page for Total Brokerage, which includes the Southern Classic logo. Make sure you see the Southern Classic logo, because if I type in Southern Classic Line Corp.totalbrokerage.com, the page that I come to looks like this. Boy, that's confusing. That looks a lot like the Southern Classic Realtors page, right? The difference is it shows you the Total Brokerage logo. This page is not going to allow you to access it. You will not be able to log in, and you're going to get frustrated because you're in the wrong location. If you see the Total Brokerage logo, you're in the wrong location. You have to be at scr.totalbrokerage.com When you're at scr.totalbrokerage.com, you will see the Southern Classic logo, and then you know you're on the right page. Any questions about the login page? Okay, now how to log in. James was nice enough to provide me with all of your email addresses. Some of you have 3, 4, 5, 6 email addresses. The one that James provided me with is the same one that James communicates with you. So if James communicates with you on your AOL account, he provided me your AOL account. If he communicates with you on your Yahoo account, he communicates with your Yahoo. I have your Yahoo as your login, okay? Just because you prefer using Gmail doesn't mean that's the right login email address. It's whatever James provided me. If you want to change that, you can certainly go through James and we can change it, but I'm using whatever James has provided me, okay? So to log into Total Brokerage, you'll type in your email address and your password. Now, if you're like the young lady I spoke to earlier that has never logged in previously, you're going to have to set up your account. The way you do that is if you don't have a username and password, you click down here, forgot your password. This is the same as this is my first time here. Click here to reset your password. Click here to reset your password. Now you can type in your email address and push submit, and we are going to send you a password reset link to your email so that you can set up your password. That reset link is only valid for 5 minutes. So if you do it right now, you better hustle over and check your email because it's only good for 5 minutes. Otherwise, the reset link for security reasons will expire. So once you have your username and password set up, you can easily log in. So let me go ahead and do that for you. scr.totalbrokerage.com takes me here. And now I'm able to log in to Total Brokerage. Any questions about the login process, what email address to use, or how to set up your password? Perfect. Monica, was that a hand up or a face scratch? Face scratch. Okay. Let me continue on here for you. Now that we're in Total Brokerage, in the CRM class, we covered the statistical reporting widgets, the calendar, and the daily to-do list. We're not going to cover any of that today. We're going to go right into transaction management. I want to remind you that Total Brokerage is completely mobile responsive, which means you can use Total Brokerage on iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, Windows Phone, iPad, any other tablet, or any computer. You don't have to download any apps from the App Store because our mobile responsive infrastructure can detect whatever type of telephone, computer, or tablet you are on, and the software automatically resizes itself to fit your device. Never with Total Brokerage, never will you have to pinch and zoom to access the full screen or the smaller screen version of the platform. The software resizes itself automatically. So if you want to see what this looks like on a 4-inch iPhone screen, that is what it looks like on a 4-inch iPhone screen. You still have all the same information available to you. It's just reconfigured in a stackable up and down manner. The navigation pane, which is on the left-hand side that shows you all of these different menu options, does take on a different form when you're in mobile. When I shrink down to mobile, that navigation pane is right here on the top of the page. The 4 white hash marks that kind of look like a hamburger or an equal sign, that is your navigation pane right there. So you can easily find that navigation pane in a desktop version. It's a little harder in a mobile version. Okay, any questions about anything I've shared thus far? Any questions at all? Okay. How can you quickly launch Total Brokerage on your smartphone so you don't have to navigate over next to Total Brokerages through Safari and Chrome each time? If you take your cell phone and you go to Total Brokerage's login page now using Chrome or Safari, if you go to scr.totalbrokerage.com on your phone, whether it's an iPhone or Android, when that comes up showing you the Total Brokerage login page, which includes the Southern Classic logo, you can then save that website as a shortcut on your desktop. If you're an Android user, on the top right-hand corner of your screen, you can save this website shortcut to your desktop. If you're an Apple user, on the bottom of the page, there is a square with an arrow coming out of it, and you can click that to save the website to your desktop. This now makes Total Brokerage feel almost like an app that you're more familiar with because it's going to save a shortcut of the Total Brokerage link right on the desktop of your phone. Are there any questions about your iPhone or Android, how to save the Total Brokerage website right onto your home screen of your cell phone instead of using an app. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and proceed. To launch a transaction in Total Brokerage, you always start with a CRM. Now, this may seem counterintuitive because you see the word transactions on the left-hand side, and you might right away think that's where I should start. What happens when you click transactions? It gives you a drop-down. On the drop-down, you can see our forms library, or you can see a library of existing transactions. That's not what you want to navigate to. You don't want the forms library, and you don't want to see a list of the current transactions. You want to create a new transaction from scratch. To create a new transaction from scratch, you always start at the CRM, which stands for Customer Relationship Management. When you click on the CRM dropdown, you'll notice there's 4 choices. You're going to choose Add a Contact. Add a Contact. When you click Add a Contact, it opens up for us the Contact Management dashboard. This is where you load in new customers. To start a new transaction, you first have a customer. If you don't have a customer, you can't start a transaction. You do not have to fill in all this information. You only have to fill in basic, limited information, only a small amount of information. So today, I'm going to start with Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks is the name of my customer this afternoon. Now, if I plan on sending him documents by email, he's going to have an email address. Perhaps I'm going to send him a purchase contract or a listing agreement to sign electronically. He needs an email address. I'm not required to have any of these fields other than a first name, a last name, and I'm required to have at least one form of communication contact. So either a single email address or a single phone number. Let's go ahead and give Garth Brooks an email address. Garth.brooks@bellsouth.net. So now I've given him an email address, and I'm going to push the save button. When I push save, suddenly at the top of the screen, I have a series of tabs that appear. You don't need to concern yourself with any of them other than the word transactions, because now you're going to start Garth Brooks's transaction. Any questions about anything I've shown you up until this point in time? No? Okay. Let me go back. Give me a second here. Stop screen share. I see something in the chat log. Bear with me a moment here. Okay, I got what I need to do in the chat log, and we're going to move back on. So now we've saved Garth Brooks. All we've done with Garth Brooks is add his name and his email address. Now I'm going to click on the transaction button. The transaction button is right here on the 7th or 8th tab, right there. I click on transactions, and I have a choice. Here it says, no transactions are found. Create a new transaction. I'm in the Garth Brooks file. There's no transactions for him. If he had existing or previous transactions, they would be listed here. But right now, he's a brand new first-time customer, no previous transactions. The other option I have to create a transaction is right here under the Actions menu. Under the Actions menu on the top right, it says Create a Transaction. Both options would accomplish the same thing. Click to create a new transaction is one option. Actions, create a transaction, would accomplish the exact same thing, no difference whatsoever. So I click to create a new transaction. When I do so, it takes me into what's called the Transaction Wizard. The Transaction Wizard is a methodology we've created at Total Brokerage to have the software gather together all of your necessary paperwork for this brand new Garth Brooks transaction. But before I go through any more on the wizard and answer these questions concerning gathering his paperwork, let me see if anybody has any questions. Any questions? Now I've got about 30 people whose windows are blacked out, so I don't know if they're raising their hand or asking questions. So if your window is blacked out and you have a question, I do not see your face. Okay, let's move on. The Transaction Wizard is a series of questions that you are obligated and required to answer. The purpose of this exercise is so that our software can go into the forms library for you and magically collect all the paperwork you're going to need for this particular transaction. So Garth Brooks is either, as who do you represent, a buyer, seller, landlord, or tenant. We're going to check him off as a buyer. Who do you represent? That's concerning Garth Brooks. Was the home built prior to 1978? Well, yes, it was. What does that mean? That means I need a lead-based paint disclosure. Is the home in an HOA? Is the home in an HOA? No, the association is not an HOA. You cannot just leave these defaulted answers. You need to check these options and make sure the defaulted answers are correct. Don't just assume they are correct because they likely are not correct. Is the closing attorney holding the earnest money? Note, Southern Classic does not hold earnest money. Yes, the closing attorney is in fact the escrow agent. Is this a referral payable to Southern Classic Realtors? Was the deal referred from Southern Classic or not? We'll say yes. You can choose no, that's up to you. Is this a Southern Classic in-house referral? Yes or no. So once you go through that exercise and answer all the questions, you then either have to create the transaction without any paperwork or create the transaction, one or the other. If you click the green button on the bottom left, create transaction without forms, then all of these questions and answers are perfectly fine, but the software is not going to generate any forms for you. If you mark this the blue button, create transaction, it's going to presume you want the software to gather all the forms for you. What instance might you not need the paperwork and choose the green button? Well, what if this was a listing that you already had listed currently and a buyer came along and wanted to buy it? The buyer is the one that drafts the contract with you, not the listing agent. The listing agent should not be asked to assemble a new contract on their listing that your buyer is writing an offer on and making that offer. Let me see if there's any questions. Questions? Guys, I cannot be doing that good of a job. I appreciate the compliment that you love me so much, but I know I'm not that good of a teacher. Someone's got a question. Bill, thankfully. I was worried. Bill, go ahead. Bill, go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Sorry, just was missing the mute button.
No problem.
So my question is, if I'm setting up a new buyer, I may not have a home yet, and I'm not going to know if it's before or after 1978, et cetera. Why is it requiring those questions when I'm just setting up a buyer's agreement? I haven't even started house hunting yet.
That's fine. You can answer that question yes or no. If you answered yes, it's going to provide for you a copy of the lead-based paint disclosure. If you choose not to use it, that's up to you. So if you want to pull in a purchase contract without the requisite disclosures, such as the lead-based paint, if you know you're looking at older properties, I'd still pull one in just in case. Now, if you're taking the guide to see all new construction built from 2017 and on, I probably wouldn't waste my time answering yes. But if the purpose of this is the software is collecting all the proposed paperwork you may need. For all we know, the buyer may go cold turkey on you and disappear, and you don't even need a purchase contract because he's ghosting you and using another agent. But the purpose of this exercise is to start to assemble the paperwork that you're likely going to need when working with a buyer, which of course is wildly different than working with a seller versus a landlord versus a tenant. Does that answer your question, Bill?
It does. It based on the way I'm used to doing it, it just feels premature to ask that question.
It might be premature to pull all the paperwork together altogether. You may just want to populate just a buyer broker agreement and not pull together a purchase contract. This guy didn't even do a mortgage pre-qual yet, and you're already writing a purchase contract. So
Okay.
I'm operating right now under the pretenses that you are getting ready to write a purchase contract for this customer.
Okay.
If you want to populate it without the forms and manually just pull in a buyer broker agreement, then you can certainly do that, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, Bill?
Okay.
Thank you. Good question. Anything else, Bill?
I'm good. Thanks.
Thank you. Beth Irwin.
Oh, okay, I might have missed an important piece of this puzzle here. So when we're pulling in the forms, because I just assumed we would be doing our transactions on transaction desk and then uploading the forms into this system. Are you saying that we would be pulling the GAR forms directly from this system and populating them? And so we would actually do our contracts in there?
My goal, James's goal, is to eliminate transaction desk completely.
Okay, so you have signing capabilities? Perfect.
If transaction desk is a Toyota, it has air conditioning, it's got leather seats, it gets good gas mileage, I'm about to put you in a private plane. Still gets gas mileage, still has air conditioning, but it goes a lot faster. It's a lot cooler than having a Toyota. That's for sure.
Okay.
Still a form of transportation, okay? We do everything transaction desk. There's about 200 other things as well.
Okay, perfect. So basically, however we start it, we can go in and start pulling forms as we need throughout the process. Got it.
For those of you that are hooked on transaction desks, you can still do your paperwork over there and merge it into Total Brokerage, but I would urge you to reconsider that waste of time because Total Brokerage does everything transaction desk does. It can be done. I have some people that are married to the CEO of transaction desk, and there's no way if they're married to the CEO of transaction desk, they're not going to use their system. They use it and they email the forms over. It's just a wildly time-consuming extra step that's unnecessary, but it can be done. Okay? Any other questions, or may I continue? Okay, let me go ahead and continue. Thank you for the participation and the good questions. I appreciate it. Okay, so we answer all these questions using the very simple drop-down features. And now we're going to click Create Transaction because we're operating under the assumption that we do want the forms. The software is now saving the questions and answers. It is going into our in-house forms library, which includes all your Georgia forms, and it is now assembling a completed kit of documents for you to proceed with your new customer, Garth Brooks, that you're writing a contract for. And this is going to take about 10 or 15 seconds as you see the hourglass is spinning, because it's going through literally hundreds of forms, looking for the right ones and pre-populating them with any information on Garth Brooks that is already included in the platform. If you went to my CRM class last week or you've watched it on recording, you know that the more data you previously fed into the CRM, the more complete your total brokerage purchase contract listing agreement and lease will be when it's populated. If you've bypassed the CRM completely and you've entered in nothing, which was the example we've done today, we just put in Garth Brooks' name and email address, then there's going to be no information to populate. We didn't pick a property yet. We didn't pick a negotiated price yet. We didn't pick an escrow agent yet. We didn't pick a home address yet, any of those things. We are now in Garth Brooks's transaction. And you now see that there's a series of tabs on the top of the page. Now, in our platform, we give you two input methods. There's the transaction desk, dot loop, form simplicity, zip forms style of input, where you can type directly on all of our documents, just like you do in those other competitors. Or there's the slightly more innovative total brokerage method of data input. You choose, it's up to you. There's two methods to put the data on the documents. From the general tab, we're going to jump ahead for 10 seconds and click on the documents tab. These are all the documents that have been assembled for you based on James's instructions of what would be needed from a compliance standpoint, predicated on how we answer the questions in the wizard. If I tell you I want to bake a cake and I need a recipe, you're going to come back with a shopping cart full of chocolate chips and icing and flour and sugar and oil and water. Some people don't realize how complicated it is to bake a cake. Some people don't realize how full the shopping cart is just to bake a cake. But that's everything that's needed to bake a cake. In Total Brokerage, James and I have sat down and gone through all the potential documents you would likely need, predicated on how the transaction wizard questions were answered. Now, if you're sloppy, if you're lazy, if you don't read those questions and you answer them incorrectly, guess what? It's going to pull in all the wrong ingredients for your baking of the cake. You're going to bring in Tabasco sauce and sardines when you should have brought in chocolate chips and sugar because you didn't read the questions. So it's important when it says, are you working with a buyer, seller, landlord, or tenant? If you're working with a buyer, you want to pull in a purchase contract. You have no reason to pull in a listing agreement or a commercial shopping center listing when you're working with a residential buyer. It's a waste of time. So it's very important that you read the questions because the software will be assembling all of your documents for you. Can you go back and correct things? Of course, and I will show you that. But the less you have to correct is based upon answering the questions properly in the first place. You can throw out the cake and you can start with a new baking tin and start over. But if I bought the right ingredients and measured them properly in the first place, I'd be done with my cake rather than you going back to the grocery store to buy new all ingredients and start over again. I hope you all like my cake baking analogy that I'm using over here. Makes me hungry. I'm ready for lunch. Okay, back to my share screen. So some of you are, oh, I see Beth's hands jumping up. Go ahead, Beth, question. You muted yourself.
Oh, there we go. So my question is, let's say I'm going to write a contract for ABC Street. Can I import the data from the MLS, or do I need to hand import the data?
It automatically imports. That's why I said a moment ago, the more time you spend back on the CRM, the less work you're going to have to do now.
Okay.
Now, for example, I don't know your Georgia contracts all that well. I'm a Florida guy. In the state of Florida, we're required to put the buyer's current home address on the purchase contract. Why? Because if the buyer and the seller get into a lawsuit during the purchase contract period, the seller has to know where the buyer lives so the court officer can drop off the legal papers, right? If I never filled in on the CRM the buyer's home address to mail him a Christmas card and send him a box of chocolates, then I would not have his address populated in the purchase contract. But if I was using the CRM properly for the past 6 months, and I was using drip campaigns to solicit the buyer's information, I would have previously entered the buyer's home address into my CRM. And now when it's time 6 months later to draft the purchase contract, it would have been pre-printed for me on the form. So you are incentivized, Beth, to add more information to the CRM along the way, because the more you add along the way, the less you have to do later. If you are complacent and you don't want to add data along the way, you can just spend an hour now adding all the data necessary to fill out that contract. But I like doing it in stages.
My question was a little different from that.
Your question is about the MLS, and yes, it will import from the MLS.
Okay.
You will enter in the MLS number of the Keller Williams listing that your buyer wants to purchase, and when you put in the MLS number, it's going to import the data concerning the address of the property your buyer is making an offer on. Okay? Other questions? Okay, share screen. Here we go. So let's go ahead and open up the Georgia purchase contract over here. Let me find it. Purchase and sale agreement, the F201 document. So I'm going to click and open it right now. As I said, you can type directly on these documents, or you can type in the tabs. Now I'm going to push Control plus, Control plus, Control plus, or Control minus, Control minus, Control minus. So you can zoom in as much as you want. Control plus, I think that should be legible for everybody. Over here on this purchase contract, I am going to type in the name of the buyer. And I got to find the buyer's name over here because I don't know your contracts. If anybody knows what line the buyer's name is on, you let me know. You could jump in and just shout it out. It'll help me out.
It's not on the front page. The buyer's information is on the last
page 8.
Last page. Thank you for jumping in. That's what I was counting on. Okay, perfect. Last page over here. So the buyer's name, if I want to click on here and put his name in here, I can just type right over here and put in the buyer's name. Garth Brooks, and his phone number is 404-984-7865. And I can push save. Now, when I look at this contract, his name is going to appear on every single disclosure, every single addendum, every single CDA, every single hard statement, everywhere that the buyer's name is supposed to appear, because I've entered it in one time. It carries through all of the documents. I don't have to type it on all the documents. If I go to any other document inside the platform, you will see Garth Brooks' name is already pre-addressed on there. And guess what? His email address is on there too, because it pulled in the email address that I had back on the CRM, okay? The seller's name on this property, let's go down to the seller's name, add that one in. This is going to be a new seller, and her name is going to be Mary Poppins. And we're going to add her into the database, so her name appears everywhere. Now, I probably won't be emailing her documents because she's a Keller Williams listing, but what if she's my seller? Mary.Poppins@AOL.com. I could add in her email address and I can send her documents as well. So now she's been added in, and throughout all of this document, her information is populated. Mary Poppins with her email address. So if I have that information, I can add it in. So the exercise that I'm demonstrating to you here is you can go all through these documents and you can type in whatever you want. Just make sure you save your work, because you don't want to forget to save and lose your work, okay? So you can type right in the documents. Do I think that's the most practical way to enter data in my respectful, humble opinion? I don't think that's the best way, but you can type on the documents. Alternatively, you can use the tabs to enter the data in, right? Because all of the data fields in all these documents are listed in a logic-based order under tabs. If I click on the People tab, and I scroll down to see who the buyer and seller are, guess what's there? Garth Brooks, the buyer, and Mary Poppins, the seller. They're listed. Now, Garth is married. I totally forgot about his wife because all my dealings are with Garth. I can enter it in right here. Her name is Rebecca Brooks. I'm going to add her in. Now, if I plan on emailing her documents, she's rbrooks@comcast.net. I'm going to save her too. Guess what happens when I add her into the people tab here? Because this is another option of where I can enter my data. It's an option. If I go back to that purchase contract back on the documents tab that shows me my purchase and sale agreement, and I flip back to page 8 where I find out the buyer's name is listed. Let's go back to page 8. Sure enough, when I make the page a little bigger so you guys can see it, and I push the preview button, you're going to see that Rebecca's listed there with her email address, and Garth's email, and Mary and her email. So I'm trying to simulate for you that you have two choices of data entry. You can type on the documents themselves, just as you're likely accustomed to from Transaction Desk or .loop, or you can go through these various tabs, and these various tabs will auto-populate the documents. They're all fully integrated, so we give you two choices. Any questions about entering data on the forms or on the tabs? Bill?
So as I'm entering into those alternative places, are they also putting those folks in the CRM as well?
You got it, Bill, correct. Every
So
single
if
thing
that's
you
the
enter is
case,
being saved.
I mean, I don't want to necessarily do drip campaigns to Rebecca or Mary. How's that going to work?
Well, when you go into the CRM, you're going to determine if you want to add them to a drip campaign or not. Right now, you're just tracking them in your transaction. You're not sending them birthday cards. You're not sending them Christmas cards. You're just adding them into the transaction. Now, why is that helpful, even if Mary Poppins happens to be a Keller Williams customer? Perhaps you're in this business for 2, 4, or 6 years, and you bump into a Mary Poppins out on the street one day and you say, boy, your name sounds so familiar. I don't know if it's from that 1965 movie or from some other reason, but your name just sounds so darn familiar. You're able to go into your CRM and see if the name Mary Poppins pops up. Hey, Mary, did you used to live at 123 Main Street in Valdosta? Well, yes, I did, Bill. You don't know this, but I actually sold your listing. You were listed with Keller Williams. I got the purchase contract right here. What a small world. Maybe next time you'll use me instead of Keller Williams to buy or sell real estate in the state of Georgia. So you're not dripping on her, you're not sending her presents and cards, you're just keeping a record of this. You're doing that in Transaction Desk right now, Bill, because you're typing Mary Poppins' name is on that contract, but you have no way in Transaction Desk of going back and researching who all the opposing customers were in your transactions. In Total Brokerage, you can see every title company, every mortgage company, every buyer, every seller, landlord, tenant, landscaper, swimming pool cleaner, everybody is listed and tracked. So you know who you've done business with to help you expand your network. Does that help you?
It does. I'm not sure how I'm going to keep track of what category they're in, but I'll figure that out as time goes on.
You may not put them in any category. You may not choose to do anything with Mary Poppins. You just saved her name in case it sounds familiar to you. You can pull it back up because you'll see her in the database. Right now, if I told you to tell me the name, did you ever sell a house to a guy named Bob Smith? You would have no way in Transaction Desk if you only represented sellers to tell me if you ever sold a house to a buyer named Bob Smith, because Bob Smith was a Remax customer. But in Total Brokerage, you can search the name Bob Smith and say, yep, he does appear in one of my transactions from 5 years ago.
Yeah, I'm not disputing the value. I see the value. I just see myself potentially getting confused with having that many more people in my CRM, but I'll figure it out as I learn it.
It's like going to a buffet. Only eat what appeals to you. Leave everything else on the buffet for the next person. Jennifer.
Yes. So we're part of the South Georgia MLS. I want to ask James or John, will we have to do it differently since we don't use the Georgia MLS?
Right now, everything will import from GAMLS. Anything that is not in GAMLS will not import. You'll manually type that information in. GAMLS information will automatically sync. Other stuff you type in manually. Okay? Other questions? Okay, moving on. So we simulated how you can type on the documents or you can type on the tabs. Let's go back to the general tab and now let's go in order, okay? You'll see the transactions automatically named. If you want to customize the name, you can do that here if you wish. That's up to you, totally voluntary. He's a buyer, which we already knew. This is an active transaction as opposed to a pending, closed, rented, or dead transaction. The software provides you with a transaction email address. Ben.Chapter is my first name and my last name. .2020 is the year we are in. The customer's last name is Brooks. This is the first transaction that I am doing for Garth Brooks in the year 2020 at scr.totalbrokerage.com. The transaction email address is system generated. You have nothing to do with this. The software creates this. We give you a system generated custom email address where you can email documents from anywhere in the world directly into Total Brokerage. So rather than uploading manually each document one at a time, you can email them in here. So for example, if you have to order an appraisal, if you have to get a mortgage pre-qual letter, if you do a home inspection for Garth Brooks, you have the option of asking your appraiser, home inspector, mortgage broker to email you the documents that they're producing, or they can email them directly into the transaction, which saves you a step. Because right now, if that mortgage lender sends that email off to Shane Kent at bellsouth.net, Shane has to remember to check her email. Shane has to remember to look for that email. Shane has to then find that, download the PDF to her desktop, and then re-upload it to Total Brokerage or Transaction Desk or whatever else she's using. In Total Brokerage, Shane has the ability to tell the appraiser, the home inspector, the mold remediator, can you do me a favor? When you finish up that home inspection report or that appraisal, could you please send that to shane.kent.2020.brooks@scr.totalbrokerage.com, because you're going to be saving me a hassle of having to file that later. You'll be sending it directly into the transaction. And immediately your hand goes up and you say, but wait a minute, Ben, if they email it right to the transaction, how will I ever know that I received that appraisal or that home inspection? Every time Total Brokerage receives a document on your behalf, Total Brokerage emails you, alerting you to the fact that the document has been received, it has been filed, and there is a link where you can click to see the document in your native email. So in Shane's Comcast email, she's going to get a message that says, Dear Shane, your appraiser, Bob's Appraisal Service, just sent you the appraisal for Garth Brooks. Here is a link to it. It is already stored in your Total Brokerage file for you. Wow, that's such a time saver. And that prevents Shane from screwing up and uploading it to the Minnie Mouse file when it should be in the Garth Brooks file, because the software allocated it to the proper location for her. Questions? No questions. Does anyone think that's a helpful feature, I hope? Yes? So you can email any PDFs you want directly into the transaction email address that's right here. And we always use the same format. It's your first name dot your last name dot the year we are in dot your customer's last name at scr.totalbrokerage.com. So for all intents and purposes, you actually can memorize all those email addresses because it's the same format for everybody. Down here, this is a free form notes field for anything you wish to put in this space. Period. End of story. However, if you look where it says links, add links to your notes, and it'll automatically appear here. Add links to your notes. So what would be an example of a link? How about the Georgia Public Records search? What if I'm looking for a deed? What if I'm looking for a lien? What if I'm looking for a tax bill? I can navigate through the website and I can find whatever I want, and I can highlight it and copy it, go back to Total Brokerage, and watch what happens when I paste it right here. It becomes a permanently retrievable record in my software. Liens, tax rolls, copies of utility bills, whatever. How about Google aerial images? What if I want to find the property from a satellite view of Google Earth and I want to see what it looks like from a satellite? I can find that picture, I can highlight the hyperlink, go back into Total Brokerage, and I can paste it right here. Now I have two retrievable links. So the purpose of this exercise is to give you a convenient location to store records. Some of you, for whatever reason, like to keep track of the Zillow page for your listings. You can go to Zillow, You can find the particular property that you are looking for, not Zillow, I don't know what that is, sorry, ZILOW.com. I can navigate in and I can find a property here. Let's find one in Atlanta for sale. And here's a nice property for $289,000. And I'm going to grab this right here by clicking on this link. I don't know why this says Atlanta when it's clearly Florida. Who cares? I'm going to grab that link and I'm going to paste it right here. So all of this information can be stored right in the Total Brokerage platform. Always save your work, save early, save often. You can't break the system from oversaving. Who's got a question? No? It's a kind of a nice Dropbox dump area where you can dump anything you want just to have it as part of the file. Deandra Bailey.
Is there a way to put those links that you're going to use in every transaction as a template so it shows up every time without having to put it in every time?
You can't put it as a template on the transaction builder, but you could have it as a template in the transaction wizard. I showed you how the wizard pulled in all those forms. We
Yep.
can work with James to program it so certain websites that you like can be automatically generated into the transaction wizard and populated for you. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
Other questions? Good question. Thank you, Deandra. Okay, share screen. So that covers for you the general tab. Let's go to the documents tab, which we already saw. It shows me all my documents, which documents are in edit mode, which means I can cross them out, I can mark them up, I can overlay text boxes, I can send them for signature. It shows me which documents are out for signature, which documents have been signed. I also have an archive folder. Why did this pull in the mold pamphlet? I don't need a mold pamphlet. I don't need that. Well, let's get rid of it. Simply go over here and put operations, and I push archive, and now it takes the mold pamphlet and it suppresses it down here into the archive folder. There is no delete key in Total Brokerage. There's archive. Archive stores things out of your way so they're not an inconvenience, but you cannot delete. For compliance purposes, everything is recorded. So there is that mold disclosure. It's just down here in the trash, which is the archive folder, as opposed to in my active documents folder. Okay? We will come back to documents and spend a lot of time there in just a few minutes. The next tab is the people tab. The people tab is where you enter all the people, the humans, the human beings involved in your transaction. The listing agent on this property is a vendor, Kelly Johnson, and Kelly works at Coldwell Banker ATL, and her email address is kj123@aol.com. Why do I want to put her in there? Well, I have 9 active transactions. Sometimes it's hard to remember all the different appraisers, all the different cooperating agents, all the mortgage brokers, all the title companies, all the insurance agents I'm dealing with. Not to mention, if I want to share documents from Total Brokerage, such as mortgage pre-approval letters or fully executed addendums, I can easily share them on the fly with Kelly because she is now loaded in there. I don't speak Spanish, but I am partnering with another SCR agent that does speak Spanish. So I am going to add a fellow SCR agent into my transaction. You know who speaks Spanish? Alan Lovell. He's great at Spanish. So I'm going to ask Alan to partner with me on this deal. We're going to work on it together, and I'm going to add him in. Additional agents are other SCR agents. Alan Lovell just got a text message and an email from Total Brokerage that says, "Dear Alan, fellow SCR agent Ben Schachter just invited you to access the Garth Brooks transaction. You now have access." And Alan says, "Well, that's great, but this customer also speaks Russian. I'd like to bring in another SCR agent that speaks Russian to kind of help out with this deal." You know who speaks Russian? Amber Fraunbarger. She speaks Russian, so we're going to invite her into the transaction. She just got a text and an email that says, "Dear Amber, Alan and Ben invited you to the Garth Brooks transaction." Guess what? I found out that Alan's Spanish is terrible. He is useless. He's not helping me. He is a hindrance. I want to kick him out of the deal. Bye-bye, Alan. I just gave you the boot. You're no longer in my transaction. Questions? So you can invite in other SCR agents if you want to work together with them on a deal by clicking their information, and the software will instantly give them access with a text and an email letting them know that they are now available to access this transaction. They do not have access to any of your other transactions, only to Garth Brooks, because you invited them or booted them out of the Garth Brooks transaction. Are we all clear on that? Yes? Okay. Now, Garth Brooks and his wife, whatever we named her, Jessica, Melissa Brooks, I don't even remember, whatever she was. Your fellow SCR agent that you invited into the deal will also have all the contact information for Garth Brooks and his wife because they are connected to this transaction. They're not going to have access to your other customers, but to Garth Brooks and his wife, they will see everything. So be aware that if you choose to link in a fellow SCR agent to your deal, they can see all the documents, all the financials, all the phone numbers, all the emails for everything related to that transaction. Ostensibly, that makes sense because you've invited them to participate as a co-buyer's agent or a co-listing agent with you, not to be confused with the Coldwell Banker agent over here that is the other agent in the transaction that's getting the other 3% commission. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions? Seeing none, we will move on. Who else do I want to keep track of? Other vendors. Perhaps I want to keep track of title companies, mortgage companies, insurance companies. The lender on this deal, I want to keep track of that, is Candace Berger, and she works at Wells Fargo. And her email address is kb@wf.com, so now I can share documents with her right from the transaction. Why do you think it's helpful to keep track of all your vendors other than the obvious choice of being able to share documents? How about this one? Hi, is this Candace from Wells Fargo? Yes. Hi, this is David Peak calling from Southern Classic. How are you? Oh, good, David. It's been a while. How are you? I'm good, thank you. Listen, Candace, I am having an open house next Sunday, and I'm looking for a sponsor to sponsor my open house. I'd like to have someone who will provide donuts and cookies and balloons and maybe, some signage. Would you like to participate? Well, David, we at Wells Fargo, we don't generally do that because it's like opening a can of worms. Then I have to help Beth Irwin, then I have to help John Johnson, then Denise Hardesty, then Gilda Cheatham. It never ends, David. So I'm sorry, I just can't help you. Hey, pay attention. I am a business owner. My name is David Peak. I'm a real estate agent at Southern Classic. My broker, James Hanby, and this really crazy guy I met, Ben Schachter, told me that I need to run my business like a business. Here's the deal, Wells Fargo. If you don't sponsor my open house next Sunday, please don't expect future mortgage business from me. I just went into Total Brokerage and I just ran a report. Do you know that I've used Wells Fargo 11 times in the past 2 years? I just added together all the loan amounts that I've given to Wells Fargo in the past 2 years. Do you know that on those 11 deals, I've given you $1.9 million worth of mortgages in the last 2 years? I have no idea how much money you made on that 1.9 million in loans that Total Brokerage has tracked for me, but I damn well know that when I ask you to sponsor an open house, you ask me how many cookies, how many balloons, and how many signs do you want? Otherwise, there will not be $1.9 million worth of future David Peak mortgages coming your way. Have I made myself clear? Welcome to capitalism, my friends. And that's how you do it. Now, notice I started being very nice and sweet, asking if they'd be nice enough to participate. But those morons at my preferred lender, those morons at my preferred title company said they wouldn't help. So I ran a report to see how much business I've given them, and I stopped that crap in its tracks, cold turkey. Because I'll be damned if I give you 11 mortgages or 6 title orders or 14 appraisals or 7 home inspections, and you can't get your cheap butt to my closing or my open house on Sunday with a couple of brownies. That is not a big ask. Now, some of you hate the way I do business, but when I sold my company, I had 1,500 agents and 22 offices. We did $1.6 billion in transactions, and it's called just doing business. I'll scratch your back if it's itchy, but when my back itches, you're going to be scratching mine. Do I make myself clear? It ain't a one-way street. Any questions for a Wednesday, my friends? I know David's all excited because I used him in my example. David, could you man up and have that conversation with your lender if in fact those numbers were accurate?
I want to say you are hilarious.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You didn't know that James signed you up for a comedy show on a Wednesday afternoon.
But I mean, you know your stuff for sure.
I've been doing this for 32 years. Thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate the compliment, but let's be serious now. Yes, you can be nicer. You can sugarcoat it. You can be a little bit more finesse than I am. But do we understand the point? You want to track all your vendor usage because when you need something, you want to be able to run a report and see which vendors you're using. So you need, because when they give you this, oh, I can't do it. Oh, I'm not available. Oh, I don't have the budget for it. But you had the budget to cash those 11 checks that I sent you, right? No problem there, huh? Unless you really enjoy going to the grocery store, Dave, and buying brownies. If that gets your rocks off by buying brownies for other people, then you keep doing it. But if you want Wells Fargo to pay for it, then you want to track all the people you're using to have them pick up the expense to keep your job as fruitful and profitable and least overhead as possible. That's my goal for you. Help you out tracking everything. Okay, enough with the Wells Fargo example. But thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. So you can track all the different vendors and all the different people you are using in this transaction. Now we come to the property tab. We talked about the Georgia MLS. Who's going to shout out for me an MLS number? Somebody give me a Georgia MLS number that wants to participate in my little game.
I'm ready.
It's got to be an active MLS number. Active. Go for it.
8845247.
8845247. Boom. And the entire transaction data is imported directly from Georgia MLS. It's going through thousands of records. It'll take 10 8845247.
Correct.
Is that active?
It is.
That's not the one we used yesterday, is it?
Nope. 8845247.
8845247. All right, let me try one more. Give me one more. You have one more MLS number for me?
Let's see where that wrong.
Unless somebody else wants to shout out an MLS number for an active listing. Otherwise, I'll check the Reds feed to see why 8845247 didn't pop up. Doesn't matter, by the way, who the listing agent is. It could be any broker.
Well, Ben, that brings up an interesting question because we use multiple MLS systems in Georgia. So is Classic, FMLS, and Georgia MLS all included?
Anything that comes through the Georgia feed as Georgia RETS, Real Estate Transaction Standard Data, will come through on that feed.
Can I interject, Ben?
You got it.
We have 23 MLSs in the state of Georgia. I think we're currently members of 8. It costs a significant amount of money to join each one of those MLSs to bring this stuff in. Currently, every agent in the SCR is access to Georgia MLS. If you don't have Georgia MLS, for example, South Georgia does not participate in Georgia MLS very much, you'll have to go in and manually insert those fields. However, the majority of our company does use Georgia MLS, and you can simply put the number in. Not sure why my listing is not coming up, but the one yesterday that John put in did come up. But that's why we chose Georgia MLS, because we have more accessibility to that MLS than anybody else. Hope that helps.
Okay. So
I'll pull up the MLS yesterday for Bob Hope. We'll use that one. That's fine. No problem. So let's go into Bob
And I can
Hope's
give you the one from yesterday if you like.
I got it. 8862186. I got it from
Yeah,
yesterday.
that's right.
Got it. Okay, so Garth Brooks, all we're going to do here is go to this property tab, and you see all this stuff that I manually typed out. We're going to drop in that MLS number here, and we are going to push fetch, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to overwrite that, and there you go. 142 Forest, Stevens, 30667 in Ogle County. It's very, very simple. Now, the only thing that's disappointing about 8862186 is, if I recall correctly, I could be wrong, there were no photographs yesterday. And it looks prettier if I have more photos, because we actually import more photos. So while I'm talking and rambling, if anybody has an MLS number for Georgia MLS that has pretty pictures attached to it, or any pictures for that matter, I'd love to replace that number with a different one, but I'll wait on you for someone to shout out an MLS number. Okay.
You
So
could do,
you got one for me?
yes, try 887-6560.
887-6560, fetch. Perfect. Jefferson Avenue, Bogart 30622. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We replaced it. It copied over everything and replaced it. Thank you, Tanya, if that was you or whoever you spoke. I appreciate it. So now we got that in there. Once we type in a property address, if we go back to our documents, just as an example, and we open back up our purchase and sale agreement, and we look for the property address, it's all going to be populated for us, right? And this is going to carry through all the addendums, all the disclosures, the CDAs, and everything else. Okay, now the property address is going to appear here. Right now, it just says property one, county, zip, all this business. It shows you the placeholder templates. We use our eyeballs to look for things. So we've given you an eyeball button. Eyeball, eyeball, right here. It says preview. Watch what happens when I click preview. It shows you the populated document, 351 Jefferson in Bogart, 30622, MLS number 887-6560, and everything that populated with that listing populates. So the preview button allows you to see the completed version of the document. Why is all this stuff red? Well, I haven't ever entered this information in. The red stuff is calling to your attention things that you've neglected to complete. I do need an offer date. I haven't done that yet. So it's just reminding me that these are all the fields of things I haven't yet completed. So the preview button shows me the final view. And when I unclick preview, it goes back to edit mode so I can type stuff in. If I want to type in the contract effective date, I can go ahead and type in the effective date, which is going to be hypothetically this afternoon. Right? So now it's there, I push save, and now I see the contract effective date. If I push the preview button using my eyeball to see things, I can see the date is preloaded as 12/16/2020. So I think you're starting to catch on of how this works. Just save your work, save early, save often, okay? Any questions about importing from Georgia MLS just by simply entering an MLS number and pushing fetch? Any questions about that whatsoever? Looking for hands. Seeing none, let's rock on. Thank you again for my MLS number, whoever provided that. Okay, so here's an optional feature. It's included, it's available to all of you. Many of you will not use this feature. Some of you are going to say, that's awesome. I am going to use that awesome feature. Once you type in an MLS number, and once you fetch the data from the MLS, and once you save that, we have now taken a digital image of all of the public records pertaining to the public fields of that MLS record. So check this out. Once I have an MLS number, once I fetch, and once I save, I have the option, if I want, to click the Actions menu and click Create a PDF from the MLS. When I click that, it says this PDF will be available in the Documents tab when it's been completely processed. Why would I want to do that? Have you guys ever shown a property that had Maytag appliances and you thought you sold Maytag appliances with the property, and when you go back the day before closing and now it has GE appliances? Or have you ever sold a property that was supposed to include a couch, and when you went back the day before the closing, there was no couch and it was supposed to be furnished? We can image all the records on the property for your benefit. So if I go back to the Documents tab, it says on the top of the list, MLS report. That is what I ordered when I clicked Actions, Create PDF from MLS. It's optional, you don't have to do this. But when I click on it, watch how cool this is. It takes the MLS for me, and it creates a sample of all of the information that was loaded on the MLS, and it converts it into an optional e-sign, as part of my package, as an optional addendum to my contract. Why might I want to do that? Well, the MLS said that there was central air conditioning. I made an offer with my buyer based on central air conditioning. Now, you and I both know the MLS has a little disclosure that says, we believe all the information found in the MLS is accurate, but we have no responsibility for the mistakes, errors, and stupidity all found throughout our MLS. So when you print an MLS sheet and you rely on that MLS sheet, you have nothing to sink your teeth into concerning central air. But if you choose voluntarily to use TotalBrokerage's option to convert it to a PDF, You can attach it if you want to your purchase contract and have the seller sign off on central air. Guess who's going to owe you central air conditioning in that property if there's really a wall unit? The seller. Because what's in a purchase contract is different than what's advertised in the MLS. The MLS is believed to be true, but no liability and responsibility for any of the mistakes. But a contract, when it's signed, you now have the ability to sink your teeth into something. Think about how many times you've confused marble for tile. Think how many times people have forgotten if the generator is or is not included with the home. That makes a difference. It impacts the value. And you're relying on the MLS to make that offer with your buyer. Questions? No questions. Okay, back to share screens. That's an optional feature that you can use if you choose to. It's available to you as you see fit. All right, so now we're going to return back and we're going to move on. So we've gone through people, property. Now we get to the financial tab. This is where we put in all the money. This property is going to be $1 million. I'm going to give you a first deposit of $25,000. I'm going to give you a second deposit of $75,000. I'm going to give you a mortgage of $500,000. And a balance due at closing of $400,000. Now you can type all this right on the purchase contract, or you can type it here. It is your choice where you want to enter this information in. Just make sure you save your work. What about agent expenses? I'm Ben Schachter. I am not James Hamby. I'm not the owner of Southern Classic. I want to keep track of my own tax deductions. I have a super lockbox. That super lockbox cost me $97.25. I also did the Valdosta Times Journal newspaper ads. Those were not cheap. I spent $479.28. I also did 2,000 color postcards. Those cost me with postage $1,247.06. I've got $1,800 in tax deductions tied up in my transaction. This has no bearing on James. This has no bearing on Southern Classic. These are my expenses. So when I run my quarterly reports to see how much money I made, I'm going to have all the receipts uploaded in TotalBrokerage to keep track for my accountant, for my bookkeeper, of my tax deductions. Huge, huge benefit. Questions? Let me guess. You all have an old Nike Air shoebox in your garage, and you just toss all your receipts like John Johnson does in that Nike Air shoebox, and then you drop it on your accountant's desk and you say, I hope there's some tax deductions in here. I lost a bunch of my receipts. Some of these are for my wife's after school care for our kids. A couple of them are for my vacation when I went to Savannah and we had dinner, but I hope I can charge it against my earnings. I'm not really sure what's legal and what's not, but here's a box of crap. Can you figure it out for me? I'm the only one that does that? That's only me and John? In TotalBrokerage, you can upload all your receipts and pair them up to your transactions so you can actually get an accurate accounting of your expenses. Any questions? Taxes aren't that fun, right? Nobody's even laughing now. It's like, income tax, the worst part of being a realtor, keeping track of my own taxes. Okay, here we go, back to TotalBrokerage. So everything here is loaded in. I upload my receipts. Base commission, you can calculate out your commission on this transaction. It allows you to run commission calculations for how much you made versus what your expenses were, so you can see what you're getting paid from James versus what your costs were to carry out that transaction. So you get to go through all these different tabs, okay? Let's go backwards now, and let's go to the Documents tab, which is where all of our documents are. Now, if we want to send the purchase contract and any other agreements out to our customer, Garth Brooks, for signature, all we have to do is go to the Actions button and put Request Signatures. That's it. Now, do you have to be on the Documents tab? No, you don't. You can be on the Commission tab. Actions, Request Signature. You can be on the Financial tab. Actions, Request Signature. You can be anywhere. Request Signature. Send a signature request. I want to send this to Garth. I want to send it by email or text. We are the only provider. We are the only company that allows you to send out signature requests by SMS text message. For all of your customers that say, I don't ever check my email. All my email is junk. What a waste of time. You can text them the signature request if you want. Dear Garth, here is the contract we discussed this morning. Please review and e-sign right on your iPhone. Thanks, Ben. You can type a message. It's a cover letter to your contract. The next option, require wet ink signing. Signer will not be able to type their signature and or initials. So you can enable or not enable this. By default, it is not enabled. What does that mean? That means when your customer receives the invitation to sign by email or text, they either have to use their finger and a stylus to sign on a touch device, or they can type on a keyboard their signature. Some people do not like typed signatures because they feel it just doesn't look kosher, even though it's completely legal and enforceable in the state of Georgia and in the United States of America. But some people, loan officers, require actual signatures, not typed signatures. So you have the ability to enable or disable that feature. I'm going to leave it disabled right now so that you can see the difference. Then you come down to the next portion. You pick which documents you want to send your customer, and you can change the order of the documents. You can swap them out, you can sort the pages, you can move them around, you can send the entire library of documents as one gigantic PDF, or you can pick and choose just the documents you want to send. That is your call, and the customer will then receive it in the order in which you asked for it to be sent. Any questions about that whatsoever? No questions. Pretty simple. Request signatures, who are you sending it to, what method of delivery, put a cover letter, decide if you want to let them type or use their finger, pick the documents, set the order, and push send. So now, if I go to the bottom of the page and I push send, it's going to send this as a package to the customer. For training and education purposes, you won't see Garth's email because none of us have access to garthbrooks@gmail.com. So just for right now, for training purposes, I'm going to change this from email down to sign on this device. This is assuming you're sitting at Starbucks, having a Frappuccino with your buyer, Garth Brooks, and while you're having that Frappuccino, Garth says, I'm ready to make an offer, and you draft the entire contract along with all of the tabs right on your iPhone or your Android. You can do this exact same thing from your mobile device. You don't have to be on a big 20-inch monitor to do it. And then you can go ahead after checking the boxes and you can click sign on this device. You can then hand your iPhone or your Android or your tablet over to Garth, and Garth can go ahead and he can sign it right there in front of you. And this is going to take 10 or 15 seconds to process because I'm going through all 20 documents inside of your documents folder. I'm matching up only the documents you want to send, and I've now prepared the document package on the iPhone for Garth Brooks. If you would have emailed it or texted it to Garth, you would have seen the exact same thing, but I can't show you Garth's cell phone right now, so that's why I'm simulating it as this illustration shows sign on this device instead of sending it to Garth Brooks. Now, when Garth receives this e-signature request from Ben Schachter, he can either download the docs individually, he can download them as a complete package, or he can use his brain. Instead of downloading them, he can just go right to review and sign. If he goes right to review and sign, it opens up that purchase contract, which, by the way, he could do right on a 4-inch iPhone or Android. And he can then go page by page by page through this entire document. And he can read it carefully, make sure it has the information it's supposed to have all correct. And then he can go through and he can sign each page. Now, if he chooses to click on each one of these yellow highlights, one page at a time, he can do that. But he might feel that clicking one page at a time is a ridiculous waste of time. So while he is allowed to go one page at a time and click on them one at a time to sign them, he may want to expedite this process and make it super fast. Instead of doing one page at a time, he may want to just click initial all documents. If he clicks initial all documents, he can either use his finger or a stylus to sign, or he can switch to type and click Garth Adam Brooks prefers this font, and he can sign it with any number of fonts, and it is now applied his initials on every single page wherever he was supposed to initial, right there, as you can see. Garth still has to sign the document. He still has the choice if he wants to go page by page and waste a ton of time, or he can go right into sign the document right over here, click sign all pages, and he can type out Garth Adam Brooks, and he can change the font if he wants, or he can switch back to draw, and he can go ahead and he can use his finger and a pen. He's going to be so happy when this is done, because he just bought himself a beautiful new home in Georgia, that he's going to pour himself a big glass of red wine, just like my wife would do, and she would have a nice toast, and then she'd probably light up a little cigarette maybe, because she's so happy with her purchase, and she'd relax, and she'd do a high five to everybody, because you can go ahead and you can high five everybody, and she would sign that document very simply. And now it applies the signature to every single page, and it's all done, and he's now just signed it. After Garth Brooks signs it, without you doing anything, an email copy of the signed document gets returned back to you, and an email copy without you doing anything gets returned back to our friend Garth Brooks. And of course, here we are in the document folder, and here we are showing that all of these documents have been signed by Garth. Why does it say partially signed? Because we didn't ask the wife to sign it yet. If we would have asked the wife to sign it, it would say fully signed, but we never asked her to sign it yet. Questions? Raise your hands, please. I see the chat log is lighting up.
Can I ask a question?
Well, I don't know who's talking, so I don't see a hand.
It's Tanya.
Hi, Tanya. Go right ahead.
Okay, so on that situation, if you're writing a contract for a buyer and a seller and you're doing the transaction, do you have to do two separate transactions, get the sellers and then re-upload that form to get the buyer's signature, or can you create the buyer and the seller in one transaction for signatures?
That is a loaded question. Can you put them both into one transaction? The answer is yes, but I beg you not to do that, because when James gives out his awards at the end of the year, if you put the buyer and the seller into one transaction and James runs a report, you've only done one deal this year. If you had one buyer and one seller in two separate transactions, you would have had two transactions this year. If James is tracking your sales volume and the house was $500,000 and you put them together in one transaction, he runs a report, you've only done $500,000 worth of business. If you put them in two transactions, you've done $1 million worth of business, because you did $500,000 per side and you made 3% per side. So you actually made a $30,000 commission, not a $15,000 commission. Okay. I bring that to your attention because for tracking purposes, it is much, 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 much better to keep them separate. Now, that doesn't mean, Tanya, that you're doing twice the work. Because remember, when you're making an offer on a listing, even if you're the listing agent yourself, the buyer is the one that's drafting the contract. You can add in the seller, as you saw me add in Coldwell Banker's customer into that transaction, and still can be e-signed by the seller in the buyer's transaction. You would just have a separate file folder for the seller, so you can copy those documents into the seller file as well. And now you've done $1 million worth of deals, and you've done two transactions as opposed to 500,000 worth of deals and one transaction. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
My pleasure, of course. Other questions? Other questions? That's it? Okay. Now, usually the question I get that you're not asking is, what if I do have to send this out to the wife to sign as well? You saw me click Garth Brooks, transmit by email or text or sign in person. You saw me type a cover letter, and you saw me check off which items I was sending. Once I push that send button for Garth Brooks, I would just return right back and push request signatures immediately, and then choose how I'm going to send it to the wife. Because Garth Brooks is having Starbucks coffee with me right now. The wife is back home in Tennessee. She can't sign it in person. She's not there right now. So right after you push save send to Garth Brooks, you can then push save send by email or text to the wife in Tennessee. You do not have to wait for Garth to sign it. You don't have to wait for Garth to read it. You don't have to count to 10. As soon as you prepare the contract for Garth to sign, you can immediately after, anytime you want, send it off to the wife to sign as well. Even if they're both with you at Starbucks, you'd go through that process first for Garth. You'd hand him the phone. He would sign your iPhone right in front of you. You then would say, click for the wife, transmit in person, sign these 3 documents. You then hand her your phone. So you do not have to wait for one party to sign it to send it out to all 3, 4, 5, 6 parties simultaneously. You just have to determine in what method, text, email, or in person, you'll be transmitting it to each one of the 3, 4, 5, 6 signers. Is that clear to everybody? A couple of head nods would help me out here. Just want to make sure we're clear. You don't have to wait. You can send it immediately. You just have to choose how you're going to transmit it to each person. Deandra Bailey has a question.
Can you send to multiple emails at the same time? Assuming.
You can send to unlimited back-to-back, Deandra, but you'd have to first click Garth email, send now, sign, and then you click wife email, sign. So
Gotcha.
exact same time, not the same second, but yes, the same minute.
Okay.
Right? You can't push husband, wife at the same time. Garth, email, cover letter, send, wife, email, cover letter, send, back-to-back.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you for asking that question. Any other questions? You guys are asking good questions. Mr. Bell.
So today in Transaction Desk, when I get the last signer on a particular document, then I put an extra date and timestamp down at the bottom of the document as required by the document. How can I add things like that in there? And do I do that after signatures, or can I make it automated?
Absolutely. I'd prefer you automate it. It's going to be a lot more kosher if you do it up front. So a lot of the documents that James has pre-selected automatically have a built-in time and date stamp as to when they are signed. They already have that. Most of the documents already have that built in. Let's go ahead and open up that purchase contract for a second. Purchase contract right here, which is signed by Garth Brooks. Let's fire off page 8, which is where the signature is. And sure enough, there's Garth's signature right there, right? And it automatically dated the contract for him. Okay? Now, you have the ability, you see the signatures, that funny smiley face for the guy smoking a cigar and drinking a glass of wine? That signature is there. It dated the document for you, right? Now, you could add in another signature and initial stamp because maybe you've got a counteroffer scenario, Bill, where it's gone back and forth a half a dozen times, right? I know that James prefers that you use the counter offer disclosure or addendum that you have available to you, but you can add elements to these documents, okay? And I'll show you what I mean by adding elements to these documents. If I go back to my unsigned document, such as the referral agreement, broker to broker, just as a hypothetical, I'm going to pull that one up. If I want a signature to appear right here, this is again just a hypothetical, I can just click add a signature box, and I can click add it right here. I can make it as big or as small as I want. Okay, let's do that again in slow motion for you so I don't lose anybody. All I did, friends, is I went to add signature box. I then take my mouse, and if I touch the top center of the item, top center, it becomes a 4-way cross. I can then drag and drop it wherever I want. If I cover the bottom right corner, I can make it as big or as small as I want, whatever I want to do. Top center allows me to relocate the item. Bottom right allows me to resize the item. Okay? Now, when the customer signs here, I want the date and time right next to it because I'm Bill and that's how I like to run my business. Add in a signature date and time for Bill. Here it is. I'm going to put it right here, and I'm going to make it as long or as short as I want it to be. That's up to me. Now, who do I want to sign here? The buyer or the seller? That's up to Bill. Bill's going to choose who's going to sign here. You click it, and I'm going to choose that Garth's wife is going to sign here. And I'm going to choose that Garth's wife, time and date is recorded here. The assign feature lets you determine who is signing what, where, when, and how. Is that clear, Bill? I can't hear you. You're muted, Bill.
Yeah, I'm good.
Perfect. Okay. If you put this here by accident, click on it and trash it. It goes away. If you put this here by accident, click on it and trash it. It goes away. So you can add or subtract elements as you see fit to the documents. You even have a scratch out feature. I've got the lead-based paint disclosure. If I want to scratch something out, you're not going to do that with lead-based paint, obviously. But if I want to take out this entire paragraph, I can add in an element that I want, and I can do a strike-through box. Here's my strike-through box. I can put it right over here, and I can make it as big or as small as I want, and I can trash that entire box right there, and boom, that box is now just crossed out. I can just cross out this one line, right? I can right-click. By the way, there's two ways to add features. You can obviously use the add button, or I can use the right-click. If I want to take out the word tenant right there, I can right-click right there, and I can add in a strike through. And now it puts it exactly where I want it to go, over the word tenant. And I can make this as long or as short as I want. Now I struck out the word tenant. Preview, the word tenant is struck out, and the big box is where I wanted the big box to be. So you've got a lot of different options by using the add feature, where you can add things, or the same comprehensive situation allows you to right-click and add in the precise location of where you want something added. I want initials to be bigger, and I want them to be right here, and I want the seller to initial here. Okay, preview, strike out, cross out box, seller initials. Question? Questions? No? Are we doing okay? Okay. What if you want to photocopy a document? You've got a document that's so darn screwed up with crossouts and strikeouts, and James is losing his mind because you didn't follow his instructions using the counteroffer form, and it looks like a circus. How are you going to fix that circus document? Share screen. Back to TotalBrokerage. If I go back to my totally trashed, messed up, awful purchase contract, I go down to my purchase contract over here, and I can copy it over because I've screwed it up so badly. Operations, copy the document, and I can make it amendable or a fresh copy. Let's read the help text. If you make it amendable, create a copy of the completed document to mark up and amend. Completed means you're not cleaning it up. It's got all the same crap all over it. You're just adding a new layer of edits to it. If you copy the document, it says create a fresh copy of the original document before it was ever sent for signatures. So I push copy amend and I push OK. It's going to copy that document over. It's going to give me a photocopy of that document right here in edit mode. And I'll see that I can still make future changes to it by using the add feature or right-clicking and adding things. But my customer Garth Brooks's initials and signatures still appear. It's a photocopy of the completed document. Different than doing copy. If I come down here to purchase contract and I click operations and I click copy and I change it from amend down to copy again, let's give yourselves a fresh, new, clean, unmolested copy of the document. I now have a second copy of the document here. I click on copy, and guess what, my friends? All the initials and all the signatures for the customer are gone. And it takes me back to its original state before all the scratch outs and cross ups and all the mess that I caused. Now you're going to say to me, but Ben, I am super freaking confused. I got 3 copies of the purchase contract. Let's take this copy that I don't need and let's archive it. And let's take this copy of the purchase contract that I don't need and let's archive it. I have now suppressed those documents down to the archive folder. They're still there. They're still available. I've got them if I need them. But now in my regular folder, I just have 1 copy of the purchase contract, so I'm not confused with copies of copies of copies, making a total mess of my file. Questions? Please raise your hand if you feel completely overwhelmed right now. I did so good! I'll pat myself on the back. Oh my God, this is a good job, man. That was fantastic. Okay, let's show you guys compliance. James wants to know that your paperwork is in order, because he looks good in black polo shirts. I've seen him in a jumpsuit, orange with shackles. It doesn't look good on him. Orange is his Halloween costume. It is not his regular color. You don't want to get him in trouble. So we're going to follow the laws of Georgia with our compliance, right? Let's go back to share screen. Here we go. After we go through all these tabs, there are checklists at the end. Click on checklist. We can choose whatever checklist we want to use. Now in James's total brokerage account, because we're still building it out, there are no checklists available to you today. There will be checklists available to you later in December. So I'm going to take you to another total brokerage account. It's my testing account, not James's account. I'm going to show you what it looks like so you can familiarize yourself. There is no checklist in your total brokerage account right at this moment. So I'm going to open up the Richard Leon file right over here. And I'm going to click on checklists at the end. And I'm going to choose what checklist I want to use. We're going to use this checklist. And now it populates for me a compliance checklist. Oh, whoops, I picked the seller checklist. It should have been the buyer checklist. So I'm going to change it to make it the buyer checklist. So the software is able to change checklists if you pick the wrong one. We have all different compliance checklists for you in James's office to make sure you have exactly what you are supposed to have. So we want to make it as easy for you to navigate the different checklists. Once you determine you found the proper checklist, the software is going to allow you to look at our transaction turtle. His name is Transaction Turtle Tommy. He's named because he's a turtle and goes well with transactions. So his name is Transaction Turtle Tommy. Now, when I teach this class in Miami, which I did last week, his name is Transacción Tortuga Tomás. So it depends where I'm teaching. In Georgia, his name is Tommy. In Miami, his name is Tomás. So Tommy over here, he's responsible for making sure that all of your compliance is in order. When you check off the different compliance checklists that James wants you to check off, Tommy is going to move farther and farther and farther until he gets to closing. If you get to a field that has a required document and you try checking it off, it's not going to let you because you must select at least one document to mark this as complete. James wants to see proof of funds. So we're going to show him the proof of funds. Now we can check off that that's complete. Notice the software tracks who's checking it off and what time and day. So we know how long it takes you to get through the compliance. If you try checking this off, it's not going to work unless you select at least one document to indicate that this is done. Now we get to a portion where I can send this out for request review. When I send this for request review, James will get an email notification authorizing him to go through the compliance protocol checklist to make sure you have all the necessary documents in order. So the compliance checklist should make it very, very easy, and it should give you the ability to go through the compliance protocols as you check off each and every one. Here's an example of a request review. When you do that, the software sends James notification or whoever he determines is the compliance officer du jour so that they can check out the documents. Questions about the compliance feature under checklists, which is not yet active in the SCR account. Okay, well, it's 2 o'clock. We've gone through transactions. I'm going to see if there's any other questions of anybody for today. Bill. I do want to finish up. Give me 60 more seconds. Don't sign off, please. Bill, go ahead.
So when are we going to see the 2021 forms in here?
As soon as James gets them from Georgia and I get them in my hands, we'll upload them for you. My guess is not until 2021 when they're available.
I did put that in the chat room. As soon as we get them, we'll get them in there. You guys will have them. And in January, you can use the 2020 or 2021s. But by February 1st, you have to use the 2021 forms. And by the way, if you don't mind, Ben,
please.
This is a learning process, just like when you did dot loop or transaction desk. Everything's a learning process. Please be patient. You'll get through this. Ben's going to be there. His company's going to be there. Customer service with Matt will be there. You'll get through this. So be patient. It's going to be a great program, but it is a learning curve in the beginning.
You know, I want to add also, James, if I can, this is a learning process for the staff as well, not just the agents. So keep that in mind as we start implementing all of these things. This is a great program, and it shouldn't take us too long to be up and running, but you know, cut us a little slack as we get used to this, just like you guys are.
Well, rather than drive John and James crazy with questions, John, thank you to John on my behalf, to all of you, thank you, thank you. John's paid me and my team to provide you unlimited support. So rather than drive James and John's crazy with questions, you guys come to us. That's what we're here for. So let's talk about the support, because you are going to have a ton of questions. First of all, I want to make my screen bigger so you can all see me clearly. Okay, here's my phone number, 561-766-0409. Please write it down, 561-766-0409. You can reach us anytime, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, okay? If you want to reach us outside of Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, we respond to emails, we respond to chat from 7 to 7. So you've got 12 hours a day you can reach us and speak to somebody. Telephone, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, 561-766-0409. If you want to chat with us, there are 3 ways, okay? The first is you can email us. My email address is very simple. It's my first name, which is Ben, B-E-N, right there, at TotalBrokerage.com. Ben at TotalBrokerage.com. You can email me. That's one option. Option 2, share screen, Total Brokerage. Go to our website, TotalBrokerage.com, right there. When you go to our website, TotalBrokerage.com, you will see a pop-up on the bottom right-hand corner that allows you to chat with us. Here it is. Hi. Thanks for checking in. Check us out. You can click right there and you can instant message with our help desk right on our website. There's a chat feature. But the best way to get help, because I do webinars like this 6-7 hours a day. So 6-7 hours a day, I can't answer my email, right? The best way to get help after my email address and after this chat feature is when you're in Total Brokerage, on every single page, there is a question mark button. We put it inside the software. Right next to your name on the top right, there's a question mark button. Click the question mark button, which is on every page in Total Brokerage, and we give you 2 options. You can search how to create a transaction or anything else you want to search, and we give you articles, or you can contact support right here by creating a support ticket or calling us. So your first line of defense for customer service is when you're inside of Total Brokerage. All you have to do is click the question mark, whenever, wherever, however, and you can either search for your question, you can create a support ticket that comes right to our support team, or you can call us. That's the best way. The worst way is emailing me, not because I'm not responsive, because you're going to have to wait at least 6 or 8 hours till I'm done with all my training classes for the day before I could possibly respond, and I hate not being responsive to my very important customers. So I'd urge you to use the question mark feature in Total Brokerage first. Last bit of information that I will leave with you. For the love of everyone, do not try to work and create a transaction this afternoon with a real, living, breathing customer. It is going to be too stressful and cause too much anxiety, and you're going to melt down because you're going to forget something I told you, and you're going to say, oh my God, that stupid software is going to cost me a $50,000 commission. Oh my God, I hate this software, I'm so pissed. Don't do that to yourself. Keep using whatever you've been using, .loop, transaction desk, whatever. But side by side, start creating some dummy, fake transactions. Bambi, Cinderella, Mickey Mouse, Inspector Gadget, your dog, your husband, make some dummy transactions and practice the same way John pointed out, please be patient, and James pointed out, please be patient. You are crazy to start using this on a real living, breathing customer until you're comfortable with it. Contact us at the help desk, create a support ticket, let us help you. We'll help you every step of the way. James says we're not going live on this until January 1st. So you've got 2.5 weeks to play with this while continuing to use whatever transaction software you're already using. And let's get comfortable with this together. This class has been recorded, so I'll send this to James so you can watch it again. We'll be doing more classes in the future. I want to thank James for giving me the opportunity to service Southern Classic. I'm really enjoying the friendly, wonderful staff you guys have. You guys are truly charming people, and I'm enjoying every minute with Southern Classic. This is now my 4th class over the past 7 days with you guys. We'll do many more. And I'm going to open up to any final questions or concerns anyone has. All right, well, I want to thank you for participating. Thank you for the awesome Q&A and feedback. David and everyone else who said nice things, thank you. I appreciate it. Let's go sell some houses. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, enjoy the holidays, and best of luck to everybody for a healthy, safe, and even better 2021. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.